A drifter in a small-town jail gets a break from a local radio producer and quickly becomes a populist sensation. But will his newfound power reveal darker ambitions? That's the subject of Elia Kazan's A Face in the Crowd. And it's the film we're dusting off this week on Movie Bones. Toto, I think we may have left Mayberry behind. This isn't the Andy Griffith I remember watching in reruns growing up, is it?
Oh, no, it's not. Folks, this is not that Andy Griffith.
It's one once you see him like this, and for me, this is speaking personally, I won't be able to watch any of his other stuff the same way again.
Yeah, I mean, how did this movie catapult him into Andy Griffith, who is probably one of the most wholesome characters it's ever been written?
And not just that, but it's like you're watching this. Andy Griffith created a persona for himself. The things that everyone knows him for, right? Whether it's mostly because of the Andy Griffith Show, or later on because if you caught him more by way of Matlock in the 80s and 90s, I guess. It's a very wholesome character, but this one kind of gives you almost because of that persona he puts on, and because his character in this movie is putting on a persona for so long of that wholesomeness that's not actually wholesome. That actually adds to the fact that I'm not going to be able to get over this if I watch him again, I think. And that was the same true for my wife, too. It's like we both had the same reaction. It's like, I won't be able to watch him again in the same way. So as you might have caught by the title, today's film is called A Face in the Crowd. It follows Larry Lonesome Rhodes, as played by Andy Griffith, as a drifter that gets discovered in the small-town Arkansas jail by a local radio producer named Marcia Jeffries. She's looking for authentic voices to showcase on her program, A Face in the Crowd. And as it turns out, Larry speaks a language that resonates with the public, and he quickly rockets to fame and influence. But not all as well, as it becomes quickly apparent to Marcia and show writer Mel Miller, played by Walter Matthau, who I love in this, that Larry's public image and his character diverge in some very important and dangerous ways, even as Larry's power and influence grow. And one of the things that came to mind for me watching this movie, 67 years after it debuted, was that it's using a very key term we use now in a similar way, but also in a way that the people who wrote this film back then couldn't have possibly imagined, 60 years later, what that would mean. And that word is influencer.
Mm-hmm.
Means something different now, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, it does. I mean, what we would like to say is that people don't react to other people the way that the general audience, the general public in this movie reacted to Lonesome Rhodes' character, Andy Griffith as Lonesome Rhodes. But the truth of the matter is, I could put other people's faces that I know of right now on Lonesome Rhodes, and the movie stays the exact same. We don't want to think people are that gullible.
It's an adoration thing. It's like, I'm going to identify as one of you, basically. I am one of you, even though he's not. I mean, the people he's listening to him are not drunken reprobates, right? Like they didn't have the same backstory he does. And it is a tragic backstory. You get a little bit of it, just a hint, just enough to let you know that it's very troubled, and that gets it early on. But most of the audience isn't coming from that kind of that really terrible backstory. But they're willing to believe this guy who is, because of his, whether it's because of nature or nurture, he has a very manipulative attitude towards others, and he's able to use his charm, this very folksy, and as he says, just plain folks, right? If you apply the same reasoning and the same personality he overlays very seamlessly in terms of what he's able to do. The audience he's able to connect with personality figures out there today, and I don't even have to name names. As long as you're good at being able to discern, like really see them objectively, you won't have to look around very hard or think very hard to think of, several names you could probably put into his category.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why we're not saying anyone specific. Be wary of the person that you're listening to.
Definitely.
Like, it's always okay to be skeptical in matters of like people that have leadership positions.
And here's the thing about this movie is like, even from some of the early stuff that Larry does, that it would be so-called popular. things that seems like he has the common touch with the people. In other words, he's looking out for us, is that he encourages a bunch of his followers or his listeners to go over to this guy's pool, this wealthy guy's pool. I'm sure it'd be great for you to go over there. He'd love you guys to go over there and just take a dip in his pool. And he has the entire town coming over to his pool. Now, he didn't invite that in. But that was a cost-free thing. It didn't cost him a thing. If you just look at that objectively, if you just from a distance, it's like he did something that a lot of people liked, but didn't cost him anything. Okay? And that was one of the oop, there's a red flag right there. You know, and it seems innocent and harmless, even to the show's producer who actually gets him this opportunity in the first place. She doesn't see it then either. And she's kind of taken in by his charm by it after a little bit.
Yeah. And that's the thing. What you're saying is the biggest issue. We don't see red flags when they're red flags because we look at certain things like, oh, this is a good thing. But again, it didn't cost him anything. There was no effect on him. No. And we're not saying that all good things should come at a cost. If you go and do a good deed, it shouldn't be a situation in which, you're going to be punished for it or anything like that. But we all saw it as if you watch the movie, we're all conditioned. Oh, this is okay because, let's say that he's against, what he's trying to show is that some people have too much money, and that's fine. That's a perfect critique to have. But in the same vein, he could have said, let's all go, or y'all should all go to Mr. Holcomb's house and, where he's making rice and pudding for his family. And Mr. Holcomb is a poor man who doesn't have all the food. But he's saying, he could have said, oh, he'll share that food with you.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
And on a larger point, it's there's other creative ways. If you're this guy's got all the money in the world. It's a hot day. He gets to cool off in the pool, but you guys don't. I'm going to use the power of my voice to start a campaign so that there's a public pool in town. You know what I'm saying? So we can install a public pool in town. That's what I'm going to use my voice for. But that's not what comes to his mind first, you see.
No.
So whether people have got it or not, it's he just takes it upon himself to volunteer people for his benefit, and that happens throughout the film. I've heard something is there's the way we're hardwired as human beings, our impressions of positive leadership, not from necessarily the most logical places. And one of the things we kind of pay attention to that we probably shouldn't is the sheer volume of talking. Mm-hmm. Whoever talks and says things the most the loudest or the most authoritatively, but basically has the most words, you get listened to above anyone else at the table. Even if someone else at the table has better ideas than you, more logical and more level-headed, those don't count as much. Yeah. And what does Larry have? He's got volume. It's even in the poster. He's got volume, And
that's, just a spot on take because that's an issue in this world today. We'll see, because of our online space that we have, and by our online space, I'm talking about all of us, the online world, it seems like these really radical ideas, and I'm talking about radical ideas that are bad, that we know, if we look at them, no matter what side of the aisle they fell on, it's this is not good for the general public. We see those, and it's okay, well, it feels like everybody wants that, but you realize, no, it's just the loudest voices that are talking. This movie does a very good job, whether it was intentional or unintentional, of showing what an abusive relationship is like.
Yeah.
Because a lot of abusers will, people will look at it after it's all said and done, or they'll look from afar, and they'll say, how did you ever fall for that person? How did you miss that? So what an abuser does is to draw you in. What they'll do is love bomb you, meaning that they're going to show you the world. They're going to, do everything they can to make you think you're their one and only.
Yeah.
And he does that.
He does.
He really does that. And he's not just doing, this is what's so beautiful about the writing. And I say beautiful in a tragic way. This movie does this not just for the characters that are in the movie, but for the audience. Mm-hmm. Because not going in knowing it, there was a part of me at first from the get-go that I was I'm kind of rooting for this guy because he starts out, he's got an alcohol problem. And what do they do with drunks in that day and age? Which
Put him
is
in the
like
tank.
the 40s. They just put him in the tank, and he's got to be there for a week or so. And we learn, because, I mean, it's not just him that's saying this, it's the other characters that are in there saying it, that the sheriff and the officers, they're not really all that kind to them.
No.
I'm not saying they abuse them, but they're not all that kind to them. So what it does is, it's like, it's getting us on his side, and then everything he does after that is building us up, and we're more prone to take his side. And then the movie, this is what the movie just says so brilliantly. Then it starts peeling back the curtain piece by piece. It doesn't do it all at once, just a little bit at a time. Like, for instance, all of a sudden he's got a wife. And even then you're going, well, maybe she was a wife, and he says it. He tells the audience this. He tells our other characters this. He's got a wife. Oh, well, she was the one always in the wrong. And she's just trying to get, like, I try to divorce her. He tells you everything you want to hear. But then what does the movie do? It starts to show us what he's like, because she says, I'm letting you know now. That's what she tells her, the other girl. She says, I'm letting you know now. This is what he's going to do. He's going to deny. He's going to say all these horrible things about me. And then when you think you're fine because you're different, he's going to go do it to somebody else.
And do it to her, too.
Yeah. What I mean is, like, he's going to go find somebody else, and he's going to do what he's doing to me, to you. And sure enough, layer by layer, we start to see him do exactly what she said. And I was wondering, what was going to happen to him, because, I mean, he still did a very good job of, like, making him look like the protagonist. How is this all going to come crashing down around him? And how is he going to build himself up back from this? But none of that ever happened. And I thought, again, just after it was all said and done, I was going, this is brilliant writing.
It is. To get back to her for a moment, because the ex-wife told him, or the soon-to-be ex-wife, I guess, or who knows what status it actually was, given his lies. And he calls her self-important, neurotic, temperamental female. And it's like, there you go. It's like everything except for the female part, everything that he calls her is basically a confession of what he's doing. The psychology in this movie is brilliant. I love the way they incorporate the psychology. You could use it just as an educational film. But what all this means, especially coming out of the 50s, Ryan, I never would have expected a movie in the middle of the 50s to be like this. This is downright subversive in ways that are truly surprising, coming from a film in that era, when everyone else was doing their best to color within the lines. If you wait 10 years, I said, okay, I would understand it. The 60s was like that. But everyone back in the 50s, it feels like most of the movies were definitely, you stay within the lines. And this film didn't get that memo.
One little quick fun fact. Most of this movie was legitimately filmed in Piggott, Arkansas, which is up there in northeast Arkansas. And I thought that was really cool.
Nice bit of research there. That's a good job, man.
It was legitimately filmed in Piggott, Arkansas. So there's this scene, especially this scene. There's this scene where he goes back to Piggott, and when he's in Piggott, he judges a baton twirler contest from like a bunch of baton twirlers in Arkansas. And there's this guy that's there with him who's noticing that, like, he's looking at some of these young girls, and they're high schoolers, folks. They're high schoolers.
Yeah,
and again, we're
underage.
What might feel more okay in that time period, again, we're not advocating for this, but someone does tell him, basically looks at him and says, you need to stay away from her. I mean, you need to stay away from that. It's not going to do anything but bring you trouble. And it's not because of the girl. It's because of the power balance. It's because of the age gap. It's because of all of these things.
And I don't know, but it wasn't there, even back then, there had to be like an age limit for marriage. I think there had to be.
I would definitely say that
otherwise it becomes statutory rape.
I would say that it's likely, was frowned upon. There might not have been a law for it, but, a lot of times we look at the past as like, oh, everything was just allowed in the past. I'm not saying it didn't happen, but I'm saying that I think probably most of the time, a lot of the general public probably looked at that and went, that's not right. Yeah, and it wasn't right. And you You could feel it being wrong in the film.
The film does not endorse that at all. It makes him only that much more sleazy. And that's what you're supposed to be getting at that point, that this is not acceptable stuff. People like Larry, they don't plan very well. No. They don't think about the consequences of what they're about to do or thinking of doing or want to do. They just do it, right?
Yep.
And later on, it's like, well, the consequences come and they look kind of surprised by it. But it's like, no, this is very true to form for that kind of personality disorder, But going back to it, it's like, so she's kind of trapped in that. But that's where it's like you do need someone like your Walter Matthau character who comes in and then builds her up again and gives her the courage, really, to do what she does. His spoiler territory. She, during a break, during the filming, he's whenever the cameras are on, he's all Mr. Charm and all shucks pants. And then whenever the cameras are off, then that's when he tears people loose on his anger and his nastiness. And so what she does is she just flips the switch and she does it so it's recorded and live broadcast his nastiness. And now in that moment, it's like, well, that's great. That's brilliant. Although I've seen people confronted with absolute truth about a person and still deny it, and still deny it. It depends how close the people in the audience are, how attached they are to the person. But if they've invested a lot, I've seen people deny something right in front of their face. As plain as the nose in your face, and people will deny it. It's like, I saw that. I could see it, and you didn't, and you're still covering up. That's the only part I might have, but it's just for plot's sake. I get it, but go ahead.
Yeah, I would have liked to see that explored a little bit, but you're winding down the movie like a little bit more. Yeah, you're winding down the movie though, so because like in the movie, it's like that instantaneous. Oh, you know what? I don't think I've ever really liked him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's kind of what happens.
Yeah, and everybody instantly turns off, and the ratings sink to their bottom, to the absolute bottom. And Walter Matthau has a great speech there. I wish I wrote down what he said, but there's a great speech at the end. I love Walter Matthau's little speech he gives him.
I can paraphrase it for you.
Go ahead, because it'll remind me.
So what he tells them, this is what's beautiful, because he confronts him. They're all confronting at the end, because at the end he wants to have Marcia turn back around and like help him. Basically, he's saying, I don't need you. I don't need anybody. And Walter says to him, you're right. You're absolutely right. You don't need any of us. But here's what's going to happen to you. People are going to forget about this. And in reality, that's the truth. So it's like the first canceling. But it's like, he says, people are going to forget about this. And you know what? Because they're going to forget about it, some producer eventually is going to go, whatever happened to him?
Whatever happened to that guy?
And so they're going to, whatever happened to that guy? So, and they're gonna find you, and they're gonna put you on some show. But you know what that show's gonna be? That show's not gonna be anything like you had today, because once it starts getting that way, people are gonna look back at you and go, "Wait a minute, I remember what you did," and you're gonna go through this cycle the rest of your life.
It's gonna, and putting him there is like, and that's the way he leaves it, and that's like the perfect way to end it. That's like mic drop moment,
Yeah, and one of my. That might not even be my favorite line from him, though. My favorite part of his line is at the very, very end, because at the very end, we have this scene where Lonesome is, Walter and Marcia, they're getting into a cab, and Lonesome is at the top of his tower. Oh, it's so symbolic. He's at the top of his lonely little tower. Everyone has abandoned him. He's thrown everyone away. He's by himself. He's totally alone. And he's yelling from her from the tip top, Marcia, Marcia. And I don't think he's threatening to do anything, but Marcia's, you could see it in her face. She's kind of worried. And Walter lets her know he's not going to jump. He doesn't have the stones to jump, because he can't fathom a world in which people don't have his voice.
Yeah.
And he doesn't say it like that, but I'm just saying that's essentially what he says.
I think he's also, because he's too much in love with himself.
Yes, he's too much in love with himself. And after that, when all that speech, that little final line there,
that's chef's kiss.
Cherry on top of the, because it's true. Yes. Because I'll even say there, I was like, I kind of wonder if he's going to listen. And a lot of times characters like that will take it in, realize that they've screwed up so bad that they've got nothing left, and he would maybe jump. Mm-hmm. He doesn't, because Walter is correct.
He's right about him. He's had him pegged for a long time. Yeah. I love, and this is my favorite Walter Matthau film, and I'm not a huge Walter Matthau fan, so he didn't have like a huge bar to get very high, but
Yeah.
But him in this movie is like, that's my favorite performance of his, and he's one of my favorite characters in this movie. You also is also my favorite Andy Griffith movie. Like I said, I ain't never going to be able to see any other Andy Griffith performance outside of this and just look at it the same way. And I don't know what happened that he got so pegged as the nice guy.
The only thing I've got, my only theory that is, so I have no validity behind this theory, but I mean, you play such a monster. You almost want to be you almost want your next role to be super nice guy.
Yeah, and you do see actors do that. It's like, man, I can't let this be my typecasting because this is terrible. I'm gonna get like suicidal or something because if I have to take roles like this all the time. So,
but I will say he does a fantastic job.
He does a terrific job.
He does.
I just never knew he had it in him.
Yeah, he makes you believe every aspect of his character throughout this movie.
Yes. I just want to say before we get to our reviews, this is exactly the kind of movie I hoped for when we started Movie Bones. Yeah. Because this is not even an underground cult classic. I have never seen this word spread around about this in any meaningful way. And it's certainly not one that I've been ever dying to see before. It just kind of looked, oh, that looks interesting, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And yet I was like, I should have heard about this before. So final verdicts, Ryan, what do you put this?
Oh, I'm giving it Fortune and Glory.
Yeah, as if there's a big surprise there. Yeah. Fortune and Glory. Yeah.
The story's good. The acting is phenomenal. I mean, you all have heard our only little ding, or at least my only little ding for the movie was just wanting just a little bit more, because sometimes that's what you want from a story, is you want to keep chewing on it.
And sometimes a really good story just makes you just always want more anyway.
And the way it guides the audience through the movie to make you kind of like your own character in a way. It's pure. Yeah, it's Fortune and Glory. Yeah. Go watch this movie. It's pure gold.
If you watched it with us, thank you for watching it with us. We all enjoyed it together. And I'm going to join you right there. This is definitely, obviously, Fortune and Glory. The film works as a study of mass psychology. It works as a study in demagoguery and emotional manipulation, subjects that are especially relevant today. It works as social commentary and the risks within mass media enterprises and elevating people to the status of influencer. It belongs in the same category, in my opinion, as other films in this kind of subgenre, like the great 1976 movie Network and The Truman Show, all dealing with mass media subjects. But even above all that, it works as a gripping drama between its lead and the people around him, whose lives he disrupts. I will be revisiting this one often enough to fully justify his Fortune and Glory status. And so no problem there. So anyway, I know Halloween's coming up, Brian, isn't it though?
Oh, yeah, it really is, folks. And guys, I got to tell y'all, I love the holidays. Now, I might not be the biggest horror fan, but like the aesthetics of Halloween and Thanksgiving and especially Christmas, my favorite time of the year.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So
we
got some movies.
Yeah, we got some movies coming up here. I gave you two to pick from, Ryan. Why don't you go ahead and pick one now? See which one you want to lead with.
All right, we're going to be leading off with, and this is a movie. Now, I want to make this very clear, not the book, but we're going to be leading off with The Raven, starring Vincent Price, Peter Lorre, and Boris Karloff.
With a little supporting role to Jack Nicholson. But once you see him, he's super young here. So in any case, look for Jack Nicholson in here too. It's a comedy horror / movie from Roger Corman. But before we go, guys, I always want to say that if you're enjoying our little trip through movie history, enjoying gems like the one we just discovered today, then please do subscribe. Follow us on your podcast purveyor of choice. And so that's about it, Ryan. I mean, I had a great time. I'm looking forward to next week's, seeing what everyone thinks. But until then, folks, Ryan, have a great week.
You too.
All right, man. Bye-bye, folks.